Hi there, Go friends. So, we last left off with the story about the Magic Knight kicking off an avalanche toward the Knight of Fives. So as far as the overall story continues, we can follow the Magic Knight down the road quite a ways toward a house, where in the distance he hears some yelling and some fighting back and forth, and it's the shouting heard between Star, the rambunctious teenage character, and she is fighting with her mom. You know, she's in the house fighting with mom, the way teenagers do. And so we move from the Magic Knight to the avalanche to Star leaving the house, even though her mother told her not to, and heading off to go to a party. And she knocks on the door of this house where the party is obviously being held inside. The music is nice and loud, and the door is answered by a man in a shirt that says 6 ways from Sunday, and his name is Emil, and he's obviously the head of the house. He's the guy that has all of the friends. We'll see him a lot with lots of friends around him all of the time. He's the life of the party, Emil is. The 3-5 point. And we follow Emil through the party. He wanders around through the crowd, shaking hands here, kind of being a politician sort of dude. And he comes across a man who is quietly crying in the corner, a man in a 3-piece suit, very well dressed, good-looking guy, and he's just broken up with his husband. And he's wearing a 3-piece suit, and this is Raul, 4-5, with a 5-4 point. And Raul is going to give us a demonstration of some of his relationship problems, and those are his stories. So from Star to Emil to Raul. These will be the next 3 stories, and the final 3 stories in this 38 Basic Josekis book through Kisedo Publishing, which I recommend you pick up. Okay, so with the specific stories again, we'll go back to Star. We see Star, she's wearing a Dirty Dozen torn up t-shirt, and she's getting ready to go to her party. And there are 12 mnemonic stories about the Joseki for Star. So just keep in mind that there are 12 and she's wearing a Dirty Dozen t-shirt. And so the very first story has to do with Star and her mother. And they don't get along very well. Mom here is not a particularly good mother. And so Star comes over, wants to say hello to her, says, "Hey Mom, how are you doing?" Walks up next to her, and Mom just sort of brushes past her, wanting nothing to do with her daughter at this point in time. And Star rushes around to stop her mom. "Hey Mom, where are you going?" And Mom just pushes past. And this goes on for a couple more times here. Mom just pushing away, not wanting to talk to Star. Star continues, but Mom spins around and tries to walk out the back door. And so she pushes around, but Star's pretty quick, and again stops her just in time. "Hey Mom, wait, no, stop and talk to me for a second." And so Mom, being who she is, slams the door in Star's face, and Star is left outside pouting, kind of wandering around here. And that's the heartbreaking mother-daughter tale here of Star, the very first one. But don't worry, things get better for Star. But not right away. The next story. Star is out sleeping. She's hanging out with a friend, Cher, and she's kind of just at a party, and she's going slowly, recovering from her brush with Mom. This is her friend, Cher. The 4-6 point. Using the major system, the SH or CH and the R is 6-4, so Cher. And they're out hanging out. Star's not in a very good mood. Her friend's trying to cheer her up. And along comes a slightly drunken Hammer, if we remember Hammer. The 3-4 point. And he puts his rather sweaty arm over Star's shoulder here and says, "Hey, babe, how you doing?" And Star does not want to have anything to do with him right now, and slips beneath his arm, standing to the side. And Hammer kind of stumbles past and says, "Fine, I'm going to go talk to your rather pretty friend over here." begins to walk around. And Star walks over protectively, puts her arm around Cher's shoulder and says, "No, I don't think it's a very good idea." And so Hammer stumbles back, a little bit dismayed. He says, "Fine." And for good measure, Star walks around and slams the door in his face. Poor Hammer. So here we are with Star. And again, she's having a rough day. She's fallen asleep at a party. And while she's lying there asleep with her knapsack full of belongings, the thieving knight appears. The thief knight, noticing her rather expensive purse there, kind of glances over, and as though he's sort of casing the area, he also goes around and checks her out on the other side, looking, that's maybe something that I want to take. And so, Star, still asleep, the thieving knight decides to go for it, and he leaps inward, sneaks up behind her, grabs her purse, and Star wakes up immediately. She's lying flat, but she swings her leg around, kind of like a round kick, and it kicks him sideways, and he stumbles to the side, and she leaps up, trying to stop him, and the thieving knight has her purse, and so he runs around the other way, trying to get away, but again, Star's very quick, and so she stops him, shoving him backward, and he stumbles backward. And then she slams the door, hoping to keep him locked inside so he can't get away with her purse, but then he manages to run out the back, kind of leaping out the back door, escaping with her belongings. Again, not such a great day for Star so far. Again, Star, wearing her Dirty Dozen t-shirt, so you remember there are 12 stories. She's quite angry. She's about to go pursue the thieving knight, and from the distance, our friend, the respectable knight, the small respectable knight, has watched this whole thing happen, and he knows the thieving knight's a rather dangerous character, and he decides he's going to come in and, being his chivalrous self, says, let me do this. I'm going to come in and help you out here. And Star, being a bit headstrong, says, I don't need your help. Jumps forward. She's going to go chase after the thieving knight. And the respectable knight says, hold on there. Let me help you out here. Let me do this for you. This is a dangerous task. In his old-fashioned, but kind-hearted way. And she slips back. And she's been studying the martial arts for years, and she slides into a tiger-style martial arts stance, a tiger palm position, to show that she's not helpless and that she doesn't want his help. And then he laughs and also slides in his own tiger position and says, very good, but I also know how to fight. Please allow me to fight for you. And Star, now kind of beginning to pay attention in her teenage girl way, notices that this is a very good-looking man who's trying to help her. And so she closes her hand and decides to allow him to help. And in the meantime, he asks her, so, where did you learn such a powerful fighting style? And from behind him quietly comes that purring, deep voice that says, from me, human. Startled out of his mind, he leaps a couple meters away, spinning around. He had been snuck up on by the tiger lady, the huge, powerful tiger human creature from the earlier stories. And he leaps away, just startled. And laughing, Star walks over, helps him up, puts her hand on his shoulder, introduces her martial arts instructor. And a little embarrassed, the respectable knight, of course, steps up and bows. And then Star steps up toward her own martial arts instructor and also bows in respect. So the thieving knight is being pursued by the respectable knight. He's off doing his thing. And Star, of course, being quite headstrong, was not actually content with having the respectable knight do her hunting for her. And so she's prepared to go off in the night and go chase this guy. And her instructors, the two tiger people are a bit worried about her also, not wanting her to rush off and hurt herself. And so as she's prepared to go out one night, she stands up, and standing in front of her, blocking her way, is one of her instructors. And then as she turns to go the other direction, there stands the other, the female and the male. And so she resigns herself to just staying at home and letting somebody else take care of her, which she's not quite happy about, but what is she going to do? And luckily for her, because the next morning she wakes up, and standing in front of her is the respectable knight, and he's holding something behind her back, behind his back. And she, rather surprised seeing somebody standing there holding something behind their back, and she's used to perhaps a more aggressive world, pulls out her own weapon and leaps sideways. And laughing, as they're drawing a sword, the respectable knight leaps forward and places something on the ground. And it takes Star a moment to notice that, well, maybe he's not actually trying to attack me. And so she steps up to see what it is that he's set on the ground, and by the time she's noticed that he has politely wrapped up her belongings and set them back on the ground for her, he's already 2 meters away, 2 meters away, and turns around and bows to her very politely. And he has definitely won Star's heart by this point. So Star's day is getting a little better all the time. And so, now that she kind of likes this gentleman, the next time that Star sees him, typically in this Go world here, it's her job to protect her territory here, to protect her home, and his job to do his thing. But she trusts him now, so she steps up and politely asks him if it would be okay if they just share territory without having to fight for it. He says, well, of course, and politely steps to the side, being the respectable knight. And she, laughing, skips outward, very happy, and then he does the same. And a nice relationship is born. So this is the dating life of Star. These dozen stories. 12 stories. Reminder. And so, the next time that she sees the respectable knight, she wants to introduce him to her friend Cher, who she calls over. And she says, Cher, this is the respectable knight, and he steps up and kisses her on the cheek. Very polite, very sweet. They're dating now. And unfortunately, right at that moment, in her little white nightgown here, Mom steps out and sees the whole thing, and is now very unhappy that her daughter's been sneaking around with this gentleman. And so the tension builds here a little bit. Mom doesn't want her to go out, which of course makes it especially attractive. And they decide that they're having such a good time together that perhaps they should go on a double date. And so she calls her friend Cher to join them. And of course the respectable knight calls his older brother, the large knight that we met from earlier. And they have a great time together. And they have such a good time that the very next day they decide they should do the same thing all over again. And so the respectable knight shows up, waiting for the older brother to show. Cher shows up, getting ready to go out. And right at that moment, unfortunately, Mom shows up, not okay with them going out. And she begins screaming at the respectable knight, how dare you come into my house, try to steal my daughter. This sort of mental process is happening. And Star, trying to protect her boyfriend, steps in front, blocking him from view. And Mom, wanting to continue her tirade, steps around. And this time Star, a little more forcefully, steps up, blocks her path, and pushes Mom back. So Mom stumbles back a pace. And Star, for good measure, steps up and slams the door in Mom's face. Mom's not quite done yet. She draws her own weapon. She begins running for the back door. She's going to come around and give them a piece of her mind. So she runs forward, and at that moment, Star politely steps up and kisses the knight on the cheek, apologizing for her mom's crazy behavior. And at that moment, Mom is rushing around the back, again with her weapon drawn. Remember, the knight's movement is kind of like a sword or a weapon. And poor Cher here is going to get caught in the middle. And those are the stories, the 12 stories from Star. and her rather exciting dating life. Remember that these are just the overview of the basic Joseki, which do not go into detail, and the more specific stories that will follow in other videos will cover more detail of each one of those individual Joseki. But be patient with that. Look for the other videos when they come out. So we've covered star, and as we mentioned before, the man, the life of the party, Emil, steps up. And he's wearing a shirt that says 6 ways from Sunday. And so you can remember that there are 6 individual stories for him, individual Josekis for him. And the thing with Emil, remember he's the life of the party, is that he calls his friends. He brings his friends into the party. He doesn't do any of his own, fighting or any aggressive stuff. And so he just has a cell phone, and that makes him happy. So here, the first one, he has to deal with Mom. And he thinks to himself, oh, well, I know the guy who's dating Mom's daughter, the respectable knight. I should just call him up. And obviously they'll have a good relationship and he can deal with her. He doesn't quite know. We know that they don't have such a great relationship. So the stories will be fun to follow after this. So that's the response from Emil for Mom. Now we have Emil versus the thieving knight. So there will be 4 separate stories with the thieving knight, and each one he calls a different person to help him. There's the story where he calls the tiger woman to help out, the story where he calls the respectable knight to help with the thieving knight, where he calls the big respectable knight to help with the thieving knight. And these are all the basic Joseki, just as they are. And when he calls Raul, the 4 or 5 point here, to deal with the thieving knight, there's a little bit more to it. The thieving knight wants to run away here, and he's not so afraid of Raul, and so he just runs past, shoving Raul, who stumbles back a step, and then he leaps forward and outward to freedom, because the thieving knight likes to run away. So this is the basic Joseki for Raul dealing with the thieving knight for Emil. So those are the 4 separate Joseki. One more Joseki for Emil. He calls Raul. And Raul, we saw from the other stories, had some relationship problems. He's very sad. He broke up with his husband. And so he's looking for somebody to date. And Emil thinks to himself, well, there's Hammer. And he hasn't had much luck with women. Maybe he'll have more luck with men. And so he calls Hammer. Remember the 3-4 point? And they decide to give it a try, and they walk off into the sunset together. And this is the basic Joseki here. This is the last Joseki basic for Emil. So we had Star, we had Emil, and now we have Raul, the 4-5 point, or the 5-4 point. And there are 3 stories for Raul, and all of them have to do with the failing relationship with Hammer. Perhaps it wasn't such a good idea to get involved with somebody like this Captain Hammer guy. And here you go. Hammer. Remember, the 3-4 point is Hammer. So in the first, Hammer is getting pretty aggressive with Raul. It's not going so well. So Raul steps to the side, drawing his weapon, just to be safe. And Hammer's not okay with this safety. He wants a more direct confrontation with his now ex-boyfriend. Steps up with his own weapon, and Raul slips underneath, shoving Hammer backward, kicks him out of the house, slams the door in his face. And that's the end of this first basic Joseki between Raul and Hammer. And again, this time, Raul decides to be more direct with Hammer on his own, steps up to the outside, drawing his weapon, Swings at Hammer, but Hammer again slips underneath, perhaps learning a bit from the tiger people himself. Very quick. Shoving Raul backward, who stumbles backward, and then Hammer slides into a tiger stance, which apparently is the common martial arts style in the world of Go here. Remember that this is the tiger's mouth shape, so this is just a mnemonic to remember that. And the final one here, Raul approached by Hammer. Raul this time, instead of swinging to the outside, decides to swing to the inside. And again, very similarly, Hammer slips beneath, shoving him backward, and then once again forms that tiger claw position, which is so ubiquitous in this story. And Raul's just had enough, and he just decides to leap 3 meters away and have done with it. And this is the end of this Basic Joseki. This is the end of the Basic Joseki from the 38 Basic Joseki book by the Kiseido Publishing Company. Again, I recommend that you pick it up. And we will be going over the specific stories to help you memorize the more detailed aspects of the Joseki, you know, the progressing movements from here. And so those will also help you to learn, but it's very useful to begin by just memorizing the basics. Memorize the shapes, get them into your system, learn them as best as you can. And these stories should make that quite easy. Remember to add as much detail as you can, add as much, you know, crudeness and insanity and anything that makes it obviously memorable, and keep that memory with you, and you will have internalized these 38 Basic Joseki. I hope you have a great time. Please post your comments, other videos, questions as you have them. Please share, and we can all learn together. Thanks very much. Have a great day.